so do you want to wait until 5 past 13 or we can start now?
Is it okay if we wait 5 more minutes?
Okay. so I think we can start. So in this meet we'll talk about Git and GitHub Basics. Hopefully you'll be able to upload your projects on GitHub so that the jury can take a peek at your code a bit easier. I'll screen share now the slides. Sorry. Okay, so we'll talk about creating a GitHub account, some repositories, and then a bit more advanced stuff like branches and pull requests. Hopefully, one of you would help me with a screen share and with the creation of a pull request, because I can create one on my own repo. Okay, so first off, we'll start with Git. Git is a different thing compared to GitHub. Git is basically the tool, the command line interface, and GitHub is just the website or the platform, one of the platforms where you can host your code based on the Git version control system. Okay, so Git is a version control system. It helps you manage your code a bit easier by making use of commits and branches and also repositories. So the repositories are the base, so to say, of Git. We could say that a repository is the equivalent of a project folder on your computer, and each revision of your code, so when you add some new functionalities, you just commit those changes to your Git repo. Okay, so we'll start with a really simple thing. Everyone should create a GitHub account. So you just have to open your browser and go to github.com and then press on the sign up button. And you'll have this nice prompt where you'll fill your data such as email, and you have to choose a username and also a password. So I will give you 5 minutes to fill this thing, so that everyone in this meet can have a GitHub account. You'll also need a GitHub account for uploading your project on GitHub, so you'll use the same one you create here. It would be nice if your username would be as close as possible to your name. So yeah. If anyone wants to screen share while he's filling this form, feel free to raise your hand and I'll pick you to screen share. For the things we'll do like later in this meet, it would be nice to have a GitHub account so that you can follow or do the commands we'll do a bit later. So I strongly advise you to create this account. If you have any issues while creating this account, you can just raise a hand and we'll solve it together.
create an address. It's not that difficult. Come on, who wants to volunteer?
I already had an account made some time ago.
Okay. Do you still remember the password or something? So that
Yeah, I'm logged in.
okay. Yes. Good. Okay, as you've seen, if you've been in the previous meeting, usually like everyone installing their code on a platform such as GitHub. There are other platforms. Bitbucket is the most popular one for enterprise things. So GitHub is more focused on open source repositories, so that's what developers usually use it for. But Bitbucket is mostly used on the enterprise space because after GitHub was bought by Microsoft, everyone was a bit scared having their all of their company code on GitHub, so they moved to Bitbucket, and Bitbucket is a bit more evolved, so to say, in the pipelines world with codes, of course, because that has a bit of more advanced system for auto deployments and stuff like that compared to GitHub, but for this contest and usually in your personal developer life, so to say, you mostly use GitHub. You only use Bitbucket in your workplace, or if you choose Bitbucket instead of GitHub for your personal projects. Okay. So this has been the first part. I hope you've created your accounts successfully, so to say, or logged in if you already had an account. Now we'll talk a bit about repositories. So what's a repository? If you take a look on GitHub on a person's profile, you see that that person has some repositories there that are public. So if it's not your account, you'll only see the public repositories. But if you're logged into that account or have permissions for the private repositories, you'll see all of them. So you can see I have 132 repos that are overall and only 20 that are public. And if you click on one of them, this is basically a GitHub repository or a Git repository. You have here all your project files. On the left, you can see the names of those project files. On the middle, you can see the commit message. So when a file was changed in this repository, the latest commit message will appear here on the middle, and on the right, you have the date when that commit occurred. So in this case, 10 days ago, with the commit message initial commit, and this is the folder. You can also navigate those in your browser. If you click on them, you have some navigation through the folders. Above that, you have a few important buttons. The most important one is the green one with the code label. If you click on it, you can see the link of the repo. You can also take it from your browser in order to clone this repo. You can also fork a repo. The difference between cloning and forking, if it's a repository that it's not yours, if you clone the repo, you can't commit if you don't have right privileges on that repository, or if you're not invited in that repository, so you can't push a commit. But if you fork it, you'll create the same repository basically, but on your account, so you can push commits to it. Usually in an organization, you'll be invited and have right privileges to that repo, and you just commit things to it by using branches. So you can create pull requests. Okay, the naming convention for your GitHub repos is to use this note underscore. Do not like link the words without any separation. So you have like each word is separated by a line, somehow like this. A naming convention is basically how it's recommended to name things. So you've seen in programming languages you have camel case, snake case, things like that. You have also for Git naming convention for your repositories, which is this one with a line between your words. Okay, each repo also has a Readme file. In GitHub, the Readme file is displayed in the repository when you go on the repositories page, and it's written in Markdown usually, and you have there usually a small description about that project and how someone that clones your project can start it. So if you have a backend, you'd usually have some information about how to run a Docker image or things like that. A quite important thing is when you create your repository for this contest, you'd have to add the jury account, and in your README, you'd have to have the name of your school and in which category you want to be, liceu or gimnaziu, and your team name should be the name of the repo. So in this case, if my team is I don't know, Fields, so to say, my repo would be named Fields, so we can easily identify you. I will show you how to add these things to a repo right now. So if I go to my account and I go to this one to add another contributor, you have to go to settings. So you'd click on settings here in the top part. You'd go on the left, you see you have multiple buttons. At access, then you click collaborators. Then you'd have to enter your password for your GitHub account. Then in the middle, you'd have a page open with manage access. You'd click on add people, and then you should search for this. That you typo. Okay, so you'd have to add this account to your repository so that we can see your code. You click on that, and then you click on add to this repository, and then an invitation will be sent to us, and then we can accept and see your repository. Okay, and as for the other information, if you have your README, you can add it on GitHub, but you can also add it in your editor. I'll just edit it now. So this we have to have this template. So something like this, and then you just commit your change. You can also add it from your IDE if you prefer. I just added it from this page because it was easier for me to show you how to write those. So each team has to have these things in their README, and the title of their repo should be the name of their team. And don't forget to add our account to your collaborator so that we can see your code. Otherwise, we won't be able to see your code if your repository is private. Okay, now let's continue with GitHub. Okay, so you've seen how a repo works. Let's also push a commit to this repo. If I take a look at the code, so I have initial commit. Let's take a look at README. So I have update README 1 minute ago. If I go in my editor and I open that project, this one, You can see that if I take a look in the Readme file, I don't have, this information. I don't have școală, filsul pe B. I just have what was previously. You can take a look in the Git tree. You see that the last commit is the one from today, from the last seminar. So I'll just have to pull the changes from remote, and you'll see I got that commit update readme md, and I have now the text here. If I want to have, for example, you see this text is on a single line. I'll just edit my readme file and I'll commit the change. You can commit from the editor if you go to Git and then commit, or if you use the shortcut, or if you prefer the terminal version, you can just type git commit and then M for your commit message, and just say each information is now on a separate line. And then you just press enter and you'll have your commit created. I got an error, I think. I'll just commit using the shortcut, so I'll just type the same thing. I'll just copy paste this. And then you can also push your commit, because if you don't push your commit, you'll just have your commit locally, and it would be a bit useless if you work in a team. Each of you having the commits locally, won't help your team. So you have to push your commits to the remote. And if I go on GitHub and refresh this page, I have my commit message here in README 21 seconds ago, and I can see that that the README has been updated. If I click on 7 commits here, the 7 will be replaced with the number of commits that you have. If you click on that, you can see the history of the commit history of that repo, and you have each commit message. And if you click on them, you'll have a diff viewer, and you can see what changes have been performed. The ones that are red and with a minus in front means that it's been removed, and the ones with a plus and that are on colored green have been added. So if you have some code, if I go back and go here, you'll have like multiple files, and you also can have changes not on the entire line but only just a single word, so it's color coded like this. Okay, this is useful because you can have multiple versions of the same project. So while your project evolves, you have basically each iteration of it. And if something breaks, so if you, I don't know, have a typo here and you didn't realize, and you don't know how to fix it, so you don't find that error, you can always revert to a commit using its hash. So you have a command, and you can also use your editor. If you go to the Git commit history, you can right click on that and you can revert to that. You see revert commit. Also, you can use the terminal if you'd like, but I think it's easier to understand by using an editor. Okay, and in addition to Git, because those were basic Git functionalities, GitHub added some extra things such as issues. You can have issues for your code. So if you have a problem in your code and someone in your team discovers it, they can write an issue and submit it here. You can also have some actions, which are basically deploy pipelines. They basically help you deploy your code somewhere, or just run some tests, or other automation stuff that you would do every time by hand, but obviously you don't want to do that by hand. So if I can show actually a pipeline, how it looks. Let's take a look at this one. So you would write your pipelines using YAML, which is a config file format, and you have these keys and the information such as what actions to run and other things such as secrets, which are used as repository parameters and are secured, of course. And then if you take a look in actions, you have those pipelines that were run. So you have each pipeline. I have 4: alpha, beta, and then production. And if you click on one of them and then you click, you can see the history of what happened in that specific pipeline and each step that it took, and if there are some things that failed. You also have a projects, I'll just return to this repo. You also have a projects board, so to say. It's somewhat the equivalent of Jira. You can manage your project using this page, and you also have wikis and other things like security and insights of your repository. These are just extra things besides Git, so they're specific to GitHub. On Bitbucket, they might work or look different, or other versioning platforms. Okay, any questions so far about repositories or? Okay.
I would have a question, if it's possible.
Sure.
If I change the name of, let's say, the core folder on my machine, would it break the publishing on GitHub of the code? I had this problem sometime and I didn't know how to fix it.
Okay, if usually it shouldn't, because you have, if we take a look here, let's see. Let's take a look here. So you see, this project is in this folder, okay? And it has a .git folder. If I change the name of this, so if I change the name of the root folder, as you said, of this, it shouldn't break your Git commits and anything else. It just breaks your editor, so to say, because you'd have to tell the editor, well, my project is in this new folder, but your Git and GitHub should still work. Because that folder is independent of Git or GitHub. You just have these things on Git. The root folder is not tracked in any way. So look, let's open this repo. You see, in this repo you have the files that are here. You don't have this folder, So when I clone this project, I'll just have a new folder that has a name. In this case is this. Usually it's the name of the repository, but no, it shouldn't break anything.
I see. And one more question. Is there a website or something where I can get Git Ignore templates? I know that the one assigned to Unity isn't properly done and I had to do some manual work there.
Okay, I know for IntelliJ, I don't know for Unity. You have some Git Ignore templates. It's an extension. If you click on new and then I think it's under ignore file, and then you can pick from here, but it's a plugin for Unity. I don't know, but we can Google it together. 1 second, I'll just show you the plugin. So it's .ignore for idea based editors, but let's Google your thing. Have you tried this one? But I think it's not for Unity specifically.
I used the one that they gave implicitly when you start a new project, but I had to delete some slashes because they were assuming that my assets were in subfolders, but they weren't. Something like that. I'm not.
Oh, okay. Well, if you change the structure of your code, then you have to, manage your ignore file by hand.
I see.
And like that's a normal thing to manage your ignore file by hand. It's the Git ignore file shouldn't it's not built to be created automatically or something like that. While your code evolves, so to say, you have to also update your Git ignore file. It's not something that is updated automatically for you by your Git or GitHub.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries. Okay. Next, we'll learn about branches. So similarly to creating a new repo, you can have branches from the same repository, from the same code base. This is helpful if you develop a breaking feature and you want to have, you don't want to, revert to a commit by hand, or if you have multiple people working on the same project, each of them would create a branch and would do their changes on that branch, and then they would merge all the branches together in the main branch or in the development branch. Usually you have two branches, the release branch and the main branch, but you can have multiple of them for different purposes. Also pipelines or actions, how GitHub calls them, can work on branches, but in a different way. So you can have different actions for different pipelines that are triggered when a commit occurs on them or a merge occurs on them. Okay, so you can see on the slide basically what I've said earlier, but in a more brushed up form. You can create a branch only from another branch. You can't create a branch, just like a repository. You can create branches using your IDE, or you can also create branches using the interface. So you'd have to click here and then let's actually Google this one. I've usually created branches on GitHub using my editor, so that's why I don't know. Okay, so they say you should use your desktop client. So I guess you can't do that from the browser version. If you are on IntelliJ, you just click on this button on the right bottom, and if you scroll up, you'd have the new branch button, and then you just enter the new branch name and you click on create, and that will create a new branch from your master branch or from the branch that you are currently on. And you can see your branches here. You have local branches and remote branches. Local branches are the ones that are local on your computer, and the remote branches are the ones that are actually in the cloud, so to say, or on GitHub are the ones that you actually see, here. Okay, so branches are really helpful if you don't want to have, 7 different folders of the same project. If you have different implementations, such as the one earlier, where we had an implementation that used just a simple list and then an implementation that used the database, you can have something like this. And you can merge changes from one branch to the other, so that you don't have to, copy paste code or do other strange things like that. Okay, and branches are also really useful because you can create a thing called pull request. And this basically says I have some changes on my branch and I would like to merge it with another branch such as master. And I also want those changes to be reviewed by someone or by reviewers. Usually there are a few reviewers assigned and they'll take a peek at your code and then they will say this looks fine or this doesn't look fine, and they will approve or deny your pull request, and then you can merge that the respective branch. So if you have a custom branch, for example, and you want to merge it into master, you can create a pull request, not just straight up merge that those changes into the master branch. Because if you take a look here, I can go to H2 and move on that branch, and then I can say master and then merge master into H2. And this will just move my commits from one branch to the other. But if I want, to be a bit cleaner, I can create a pull request. If we go here and I switch to this branch, or let's switch to a branch that has okay, it doesn't allow me to. You should have okay, I can click on contribute, then open pull request, but it's not, it doesn't have any different commits to the master, so I can't create a pull request. If you want to create a pull request to a public repository, but that is not yours, so for example, you want to add some code to this repository, to Hardcore Entrepreneur News API demo, you have to fork that repository, commit the changes to your fork, so to this repository that has been added to your account, and then you'll be able to pull requests to my repository, not to your own fork. And then if people approve your code changes, it will be merged in this repository. You can try this on this repository. Let's take a look. Now Git practice, okay. So you'd just click on the fork button. If you'd like, you can actually try this. I can send you this link on the support groups, and you'd have to just click on fork, then commit something to your fork, and then you'd be able to pull request. If anyone wants to take the screenshot and do this, that would be actually really nice, so that the others can see how to make a fork and a pull request to a public repository. If you already are invited to a repository, so how I've showed you earlier, if you are a collaborator to a repository, you can create a pull request without forking the repository. You already have right access to that repository, and you don't have to fork it and then commit to that and then create the pull request. Okay, if nobody wants to give it a shot, then that was about it. If you want to initialize a folder as a Git folder, you can either you'd have a version control system button here instead of Git. You'd click on that, and then you'd have to click on share project on GitHub, and it will appear on GitHub. You can also create a new repository, or if you are on GitHub, you have a plus button in the top right, new repository. And then you'd have your name, and if you want your repo to be public or private, you can also add some description of that repository. But if you want to start by creating your Git repository locally, you just have to type git init in the folder that you want to initialize your GitHub repository, and then you'd be able add it to a cloud service such as GitHub. Okay, so if anyone wants to fork it, or if anyone has a question about anything, we can do that. Otherwise, that was it about a quick rundown of Git and GitHub. If you want the slides, just tell me, I'll post them or add them to the support groups. But on the slide, it's just, some quick text.
We have a question, Razvan.
Not about the sending the PowerPoint presentation to the WhatsApp group. Yes, I think it will help.
Okay, I'll send it to you. I think it would be, because on this slide I don't have like a lot of text. I don't really like all of text kind of slide. I'll send them to you, no worries. But I'm just saying, I don't know how extra helpful that'd be to you to actually create your repo and stuff. The easiest would be to watch the record that will be posted on YouTube, but I'll after this meet I'll put the slides for Git and for the other for the API on the WhatsApp groups.
Actually, this PowerPoint was a good example for you, the ones who participated the contest, because the ones who will get in the final maybe will make also PowerPoint while presenting the project. So in the PowerPoint, you don't have to put a lot of text, just something to support your speech. The GitHub tutorial is very important because here you will put your final project. As Dinu said, you'll have to add the hardcore entrepreneur Jerry as contributor. Of course, you can make your repository public. In this way, everybody will see everything, but you can leave it private and add us there. In the README part, you have to put a link towards your video, your demo, a link towards your speech, and so on. So everything which is important for us to judge has to be put in the repository. We'll send you some messages in the future also, but it's good to use GitHub. Also, you are more than one in a team, so we will see if everybody worked at the code. Barbu Alexandru.
Yeah, I've been wanting to ask about the Git Ignore file. I know I mentioned it, but I'm not quite sure what it does.
Okay, you have some files in your project that are not really fit for GitHub, such as files executables. When you build your backend, let's take a look at the example from the past seminar. You see this build folder, and you have some things in it. And the build folder, you don't really want to have it on GitHub because it may contain large files such as your executable, and those can be generated from the code. So you just have like one command to build the project, and this would appear locally. So you have to use a Git Ignore file to tell Git to not track those files. So if you take a look in this Git Ignore file, I have the build folder with a slash. So this tells Git everything that is in the build folder, just pretend like it doesn't exist. So don't track it for me. So if you take a look on this, I don't have, you see the build folder on GitHub. I just have source and my Gradle wrapper. Anything else, like the idea folder that contains just editor configs or VS Code folders, if you use VS Code, won't be tracked, because this can be just generated from the code that is tracked on GitHub, and it would be useless to commit them. And also, like, you can't really, keep in mind the changes that are made to an executable file, or things like this, because they're not really readable text, and it would make no sense to track them with a versioning system.
One more thing is that even though you don't have a size limit on GitHub, they recommend you to keep the repository under 1 GB. So if you have a lot of modules, for example, a lot of dependencies, plugins and things like this, you don't need to add also the source code of those plugins, because all those plugins can be found in the, for example, here in Spring, in the pom.xml file. So we can download them automatically on our computer with one command or things like this. Your repository should only contain what you did, basically. Don't add, as Dino said, executables, dependencies, other stuff like this.
Yes. So basically anything that can be, generated, you usually don't want to upload that to GitHub. You don't want to track that. And thanks for the question, and thanks for paying attention.
Ana, vă că și tu ai o întrebare.
Yes. So around what time should we add the hardcore entrepreneur team to our repository? So during the process of the app developing or at the end?
No, at the end. So after the last webinar.
Okay, thank you.
Or better when you have to edit, you have a deadline, a deadline to finish the application. Till the deadline, let's say like that.
Okay.
So we won't check what you work during and who does commits and so on. Just the final things.
Okay. So at the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so if there are no other questions, thanks for joining and for paying attention, and good luck to the next webinars and to the contest.
Thank you. Bye.